Are you about to face your asylum interview with USCIS? Right now, they're conducting tons of interviews. We're getting calls every single day from people who need help preparing, and most of them have absolutely no clue what they're getting into. They don't know what to expect, which is exactly why I made this video. Because here's the truth. Knowing what to expect is a major part of ensuring you're prepared and don't get overwhelmed during what can be an incredibly stressful day. Stick with me to the very end of this video, because I'm going to reveal the absolute #1 thing you can do to prepare that can dramatically increase your chances of winning your asylum case. Please, share this video with folks in your community who need to be prepared for their asylum interview. I'm Brian Manning, and I used to be an asylum officer with the government, but now, as an asylum lawyer, I help immigrants all over the country secure their future in America through asylum. Let me know in the comments if you've got an asylum case pending or are considering applying. I'd especially like to hear from you if you've been waiting for an asylum interview for multiple years. Let me know how long you've been waiting. Okay, let's talk about what happens after you've arrived at the building where the asylum office is, and you're back in the asylum officer's office. The interview room itself is typically small and plain, just a desk with computer monitors, chairs, and perhaps a few government posters. The officer will sit behind the desk, with you seated across from them. If you have an interpreter, they'll join you in the room. Your lawyer can be in the room with you, or they can participate virtually. Any family members whom you included as dependents in your application will be in the room with you as well, at least either at the beginning or perhaps the end of the interview. But they will likely be allowed to wait in the lobby during most of the interview. The actual interview generally lasts between 2 to 4 hours, though I've conducted interviews that went much longer. I once had an interview that lasted nearly 8 hours. You need to be ready for a long day. Bring a couple snacks to eat during breaks, and don't be afraid to ask for a pause so you can step out and decompress or recapture your composure. Things can get really intense at these interviews. The interview unfolds in 5 distinct phases. First is the administrative phase. The officer begins by introducing themselves, perhaps making a tiny bit of small talk, and then explaining the purpose of the interview. They'll verify your identity, address, and phone number. You'll be asked to raise your right hand and take an oath to tell the truth. The officer will explain the confidentiality of the process, assuring you that information from your application won't be shared with your home government. If you're using an interpreter, they'll verify that you understand each other. If there are any issues with interpretation, it's critical to speak up immediately. By the way, if you want to maximize your chances for asylum success, then be sure to hit the subscribe button and bell notification so you don't miss the insights that I share on this channel. Okay, the second phase is application review. The officer methodically reviews your Form I-589 asylum application, line by line, which can take up to an hour, or sometimes even longer. They'll ask if any information needs updating or correction. Perhaps you've moved since filing, have a new job, or maybe there were mistakes in your application. The officer marks changes in red ink directly on your form if you applied on paper, or makes them electronically if you applied online through a My USCIS account. This review covers all parts of your application: biographical information, family details, travel history, education, and employment background. At the end of this review, you'll sign your application, confirming all information is now true and correct. This signature has legal significance. You're attesting, under penalty of perjury, that everything is truthful. The third phase is substantive questioning. This is the heart of the interview, where the officer delves deeply into your asylum claim. The officer will probably start out by focusing on any past harm you've experienced. They want specific details. When exactly did incidents occur? Where were you? Who harmed you? What exactly did they do? What did they say before, during, and after? How were you injured? Did you seek medical treatment? Did you report incidents to authorities? If not, why? I can't stress enough how important details are here. Many asylum seekers say things like, "They beat me," without elaborating. The officer needs to know if you were punched, kicked, hit with objects, where on your body, how many times, and what injuries resulted. Being vague or speaking in generalities won't help your case. The officer will also explore your fear of future persecution, asking things like, what specifically would happen if you returned today? Who exactly would harm you? How would they find you? Why would they still be interested in you now, given that you fled your country some time ago? Could you safely live elsewhere in your country? You've got to be ready to point to any words the persecutors have used or any circumstances in general that indicate that you remain at risk. Under the law, you've got to convince the asylum officer that there is at least a 10% chance that you will be harmed in the future in a manner that is sufficiently severe to constitute persecution, as that word is interpreted in the U.S. asylum context. Okay, one of the most important things the officer will ask you about is the motive of the persecutors. Why are they targeting you? What is it about you that makes them want to harm you? This is because to win asylum, you've got to establish a connection between your persecution and one of the 5 protected grounds: your race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership in a particular social group. The officer needs to understand why you were targeted specifically and how your persecution relates to one of these grounds. They will ask you tons of questions to try to understand the motives of the persecutors. Before concluding this phase of the interview, the officer will ask if there's anything that you haven't yet discussed, but which you'd like the officer to know about your case. This is your opportunity to mention anything relevant that wasn't covered. Throughout this questioning, you'll hear constant typing as the officer documents your responses. Don't be concerned if they look at their screen more than at you. They're creating a record of your testimony. The 4th phase of the asylum interview involves security-related questions to determine if you're barred from receiving asylum. The officer will ask if you've ever harmed another person, been associated with terrorist organizations, committed crimes, or persecuted others. These questions are asked of everyone, regardless of background. The officer will also verify whether you've applied for asylum elsewhere or been offered permanent residence in another country. In the 5th and final phase, the officer explains how and when you'll receive your decision. They won't tell you their decision at the interview. Depending on where you live and on the policy in place at the moment, you'll either return to the office in 2 weeks to pick up the decision in person, or it will be mailed to you. Finally, the officer will escort you back to the waiting area, and your interview is complete. Now, this may all sound easy, but it's not. This is almost certainly going to be an incredibly intense day for you, where emotions are running high and it's easy to feel overwhelmed. The asylum interview is much harder than most people expect. But I promise you, you can take steps to proactively prepare, and in doing so, greatly increase your chances for success. As promised, here's the absolute #1 thing you can do to prepare for your asylum interview. Complete a full-scale mock interview with an experienced asylum lawyer. Nothing matches this in terms of preparation effectiveness. A mock interview simulates the actual experience, letting you understand exactly what it feels like to be in that position. You'll get familiar with the questions you'll face. Practice articulating responses under pressure and receive feedback on how you can improve. At my law firm, we offer this as a standalone service for people who either don't have time before their interview for full representation, like when someone calls us just 7 or 10 days before their interview, or for those without the resources to hire us for complete representation. Our clients consistently tell us that this mock interview and the debrief session we conduct a few days later, where we provide additional feedback and share our best tips, was the most valuable part of our entire representation. Many credit this practice as the key factor that helped them win their asylum case. During these mock interviews, we replicate the exact conditions you'll face. We ask the same types of questions in the same order and put you through all the same steps you'll face on the day of your real interview. We point out inconsistencies or vague responses. We show you how to provide the level of detail that asylum officers expect. And perhaps most importantly, we teach you how to connect your experiences to the legal requirements for asylum. The reality is that even people with strong, legitimate asylum claims can lose their cases simply because they weren't prepared for the interview process. Don't let that happen to you. If you're ready to take the next step and get help with your asylum case, call my office today. That number is 713-909-0401. Remember, we help people all over the country, so it doesn't matter where you live. Call us now to schedule an Asylum Strategy Session so we can help you secure your future in America through asylum. Again, I'm Brian Manning, and it's an honor to serve you in your asylum journey.